Good morning. Good morning. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Whew. How y'all doing today? Thursday in the week, working hard, working in your virtual space, trying to make sense of it all. You got some money coming, look like they passed it up there. So checks are coming, help is on the way, they say. How's your family doing? Everybody good? COVID stuff has got us hemmed up. They're talking about, they're reminiscing on a year ago. We walked into this situation and they've learned so much on the fly on how to take care of us in the event that we get the COVID. And, I know a lot of us have lost, friends and loved ones, or we know people who have come down with the virus, but we've been in this thing, man, a whole year. Jeez. I was at the Hall of Administration when they shut down LA. That was a trip. That was a trip to see those guys getting up there on the podium, and then they just shut it all down. No more, nothing. Just go home. It's just really, really something. Wow, what a great show we have for you today. You can catch us on Beat City Radio, beatcityradio.com, ColumbusOnCoffeeCompany.com, on demand, wherever you get your podcast. We just started that piece there, the audio only. Support us if you like. You can hit us, Cash App, buy some advertising, PayPal, whatever. We're just trying to reach all across the world to be culturally relevant, give you some information, inspiration, and all that. It is Women's History Month. So I just went through my little Rolodex and said, let me just find the most powerful, awesomest, is that a word? Awesomest women in broadcasting that I could ever find and shoot. I got it, right? I got it. So let's just start. I got a lot of women here. Look, I've worn my fancy African clothes today because I have all of these high-powered women here, and I just want to make it, make myself look presentable, as my mama used to say. Ladies and gentlemen, first I'm going to start. I think she's over there in North Carolina there. There's Mutter Evans. She was just inducted into the National Black Radio Hall of Fame, radio station owner, cultural enthusiast, and just an awesome woman. Good morning. How are you?
Hello, Greg. I'm great. How are you?
Doing all right. Out here
Super.
Making stuff happen.
There you go.
All right. Next up, all the way from Johannesburg, South Africa. This is my friend right here. She is one of the most awesome women I just know, period. She is a superstar over there in South Africa. She's a news anchor. She's got a well-known gospel radio show that's syndicated all over the nation down there, and indeed all over the continent. Thami Ngubeni, good morning.
Greg, so good to be with you once again. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes. Yeah, look at this. Watch this. I worked alongside this woman for 2 decades of my life, and she is incredible, fighting the good fight. Big, legendary radio station in the legendary city. Ladies and gentlemen, Karen E. Slade, good morning.
Good morning, Greg. Good morning, Mutter. Good morning, Karen. I want to pronounce that correctly. Thami?
Thami, that's right.
Thami, very nice to meet you.
Awesome.
Yes.
And Greg, just before you go on with your next introduction, I wasn't quite sure how to pronounce that because we'd say Mutter, but I hear you'd say Mutter, right?
Okay. What's missing there, because I couldn't get my computer to do it quickly, is the umlaut. So it looks like Mutter, but it is German in its orientation, but it's Mutter.
It's Mutter. Hello to all of you.
Hello to you too, Thami.
Thami, we're in high cotton around here. These ladies here are they're superstars in their own right, for sure. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. All right, this is my new friend right here. I've been reading a lot about her, and I know if you guys have seen any of our promotional pieces, you probably were like, Wendy Williams. No, not that one. The boss. Ladies and gentlemen, Wendy Williams, good morning from WCLK in Atlanta. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to meet you all and all of these phenomenal ladies. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Wendy, I read about you because I'm really interested in the public media space, and that's actually how I discovered you. And then I happened to notice that you were the general manager of WCLK, where my friend David Linton works there as your program director. And I was like, oh, okay, we have to have her on to chit chat about all things radio.
Absolutely.
All right, now let's get to it. Okay, so here we are. It's Women's History Month, and it's been a heck of a year, right? 2020 was a year that will of biblical proportions, if you really look at it. And, first of all, how are all of you feeling? I'll start with you, Wendy. Just how are you feeling as you went through the pandemic? Is your family okay? And then follow up with, how did your radio station respond and pivot in this crazy time of COVID-19?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Greg. Like you just mentioned, it was a year that certainly shook us to the core. We were caught off guard, and all we could do was shelter in place. You remember at that time, early on, it was shelter in place. There were curfews, and my family happens to be all over the country, mostly on the East Coast. So it was difficult that we couldn't visit the way we normally do. I had plans for Easter. Everybody was going to come down to Atlanta for Easter. They were coming from all places, East Coast, DC, Ohio, Cleveland. So it really put a lot of stumbling blocks in our path. But more than that, it was an anxious time for everyone, because even the thought of getting with your own relatives was so scary and so, just debilitating, that we really had to shelter in place. And it was not until summer that we finally took a chance with some small outdoor gatherings, family-wise, that we did get together and we did get to see each other. So, for even business and for family, as you all know, the household word, and video chats and everything else that could be video. As far as the station is concerned, we are a public station, just as you mentioned before. We're nonprofit. We rely on our community and individual membership support for our livelihood. About 50-60% of our funding comes from public support. We were in the midst of a campaign. We had volunteers from the community who came in as a jazz station. They come in, they love the jazz music that we play, 1.9. They were here. We were ready to go on air. It was day 2. I'll never forget. It was on a Friday. Thursday night, we got the news that we were in a pandemic. And so as we sat here, the news became more grave. And so we made a decision that even though we needed to raise the money and have that campaign, it was in our best interest. It was in the best interest of our volunteers to just cancel. We had people, I had to go into the pledge room and say, you have to go home. Never has that ever happened before. And of the volunteers who had come in that day, they were over 60. So we, out of the abundance of caution for them, we shut everything down. And we went home and we decided to get on a schedule where everything in our studios now was done from where we did automation. We automated the station. Probably 90% of the station at that time was automated. And then because of David, who our program director, eventually, bit by bit, he began to work in a way that we could have some in-person visits. We went through a rigid cleaning and social distancing, following all the CDC guidelines to get back up to speed by maybe summer. But yeah, it shook us to our core. It interrupted our fundraising, but we're still here, and we're so thankful that we're finally seeing that we have been able to really not miss a beat lately, because things have started coming back. We're practicing social distancing, underwriting, which is like advertising, that's coming back, because all of our entertainment revenue, as you all know, there's no more concerts, there's no more jazz shows, all of that went away. So we just had to learn a new way forward. But thankfully, I didn't lose any people personally. Well, actually, I did lose a couple of people. It was not due to COVID. We had some tragedies that did happen last year, but it wasn't due to COVID per se, but we missed them dearly, and life has changed substantially for us.
All right, Ms. Slade there, KJLH Radio Free. You guys have had your hands full, because I just know, COVID hits. Then social justice protests happened, and we know the role there that the radio station had. That's just in the DNA of the radio station. Wow. How have you been faring?
Well, professionally, it's been a challenge, but let me just start by saying I work with a phenomenal group of people, professionals that really leaned into it and stepped up. We had a couple of cases of COVID of our staff. So we may have been slightly ahead of the curve in notifying. We immediately shut the premises down. We set everybody up to do their shows remotely because we're live and local. We just weren't in studio. So we had a lot of technical challenges initially, but everybody, they just pulled together. My engineer was fantastic. We were all calling him. I had a computer from 2006 and he's like, no, Karen, you got to get a new laptop. So honestly, we were all not energized, but committed to getting information out and staying on top of it. We're a music station. We have a talk show Monday through Friday, early morning. We added a Saturday talk show, because there was so much information, so much misleading information coming out. And we wanted to make sure that we were on top of it and communicating directly to our audience. So in the process, I think everyone fine-tuned their technical skills. They learned to do their jobs remotely. The staff that caught COVID recovered, thankfully. We've done a thorough cleaning and we've implemented some new practices based on LA County Department of Health regarding COVID. We are still closed. Everyone is still working remotely. We have a handful of people that come in, but we didn't miss a beat. From a financial standpoint, thankfully, it was a political year, so that really kind of carried us through, that along with census. So where we did have some hiccups, I think the social consciousness raised by the aftermath of George Floyd, what have you, has really been instrumental in kind of bringing clients back into the fold for Black-owned and operated media. And with that, I'll give NABOB a nod, because they've been instrumental in beating the wagon, saying, hey, this is broadcast, this is Black-owned. You need to support us. We support you. We buy your products. And they've been doing this for years. But it's like that was a convergence of good. So they were prepared, they were on site. We started getting national buys, which helped us tremendously. The concerts closed down, the entertainment closed down, but the political census and then the national clientele picked up. So we weathered it. We're still weathering it. We're still closed down, but I'm guardedly optimistic.
You guys had one of the best political campaigns ever with Auntie Maxine said, I got the receipts.
Yeah, it was a battle. Initially it was presidential. We had Bloomberg, who dropped, thankfully. So we had the primary, and then locally, Maxine has never been challenged the way Congresswoman Maxine Waters has never been challenged the way she had. And I don't know that her competitor he wasn't as qualified, absolutely not qualified, but he had so much money.
Yes.
I mean, he had like $10 million to drop in LA for that seat, and he still lost.
Yes.
So, we did benefit. It was rough and ragged. I was getting all kind of calls saying, get him off the air. He's talking about Auntie. I'm like, I got to advertise him. I can't take one candidate and not the other. So it worked out well for us. And she won re-election.
She won her re-election when she came on there and said, "Oh, I got the receipts." That was everybody was talking about. I just want to listen to KJLH to hear her say it. So funny. All right, let's go out to Johannesburg. There, Thami, are you there? There she is.
Greg, yes.
Yeah, so how have you been faring? I know you've been on the show since COVID, but talk to the people and share your experiences since we've had the COVID-19, and then you're watching from afar all the craziness that's happening in the United States. Give us a sense as a broadcaster what you see and how you've been able to pivot in such a time as this.
Pretty much like the ladies that have been speaking now. it really was an opportunity to fine-tune our technical skills. It's an opportunity to perhaps venture into places that beforehand we had not. For example, the radio station that I'm with, which is Mutter FM, it's a commercial radio station which forms part of the South African Broadcasting Corporation's bouquet of a nationwide radio stations. Not only us, but other stations as well within the bouquet have not necessarily been operating from the SABC premises. A lot of the broadcasters have been hooked up at home, were on their laptops and using the requisite software to be able to connect. And that really has been a great opportunity to be able to engage on a technological level. I actually happen to go into the studio when I do my broadcast, but my co-host is broadcasting from another city all the way from Durban. And so we do our connections there. But it really has been an opportunity to grow, to fine-tune our skills, and also look at where the new growth opportunities are that perhaps beforehand we may have taken for granted. One thing that's also changed quite a lot is, in as much as we are a music-driven radio station, the messages of social consciousness in the programming have become a whole lot more blatant, talking about social distancing, how to try and keep safe from COVID-19, how to take care of yourself and your family and being responsible. A lot of those public service announcements have been coming through on the radio station, as well as gender-based violence, which is also one of the key concerns in our country. Our president at some point called it the second pandemic. So at our particular radio stations, we particularly had all the male jocks recording their own personal accounts against gender-based violence and their own very personalized messages. And the stance that has really been taken there is a male mentorship stance, men are talking to men, because for far too long, the voice has been the voice of women against abuse. But now the tide has to turn, and men too have to talk to their peers in the way to go as far as battling gender-based violence. So in many ways, there have been a lot of opportunities for progressive, constructive, challenging conversations, deep introspection. It's been a very tough time for the country. It really has been, because we've lost so many of our luminaries, whether they be in government, the speaker, or rather the speaker in the presidency. He passed away, Jackson Mthembu. We've had so many others in entertainment who are luminaries. We've had leaders in business pass away from COVID-19. We've had friends pass away, family members. I've had a personal cousin who passed away from COVID-19. So it really has been a very personal pandemic. It certainly is not just about the numbers. It's not just about something that you hear out there and you don't experience yourself. And so what that has done is it's brought the sense of fatality. It's brought the sense of the fact that we are all transitioning and are not here forever, and how we choose to live our lives and what we choose to do with the lives that we have. I think for many people, it brought that home, as well as the things that you prize and that you treasure most, because no amount of money can keep you safe from COVID-19. It doesn't matter whether you are a prince or a pauper. It's an equal opportunity virus, and it gets you, whoever you are, wherever you may be. So it really put all of us in one footing, and really, I think, put us in a position where we have to focus on the humanity in us all and the things that bind us and what really matters as human beings and as people. So it really has been an opportunity for the nation, South Africa, to unite, but it also brought to the spotlight the blind spots that we have as far as the widening gaps in inequality, police brutality, which we are still currently experiencing, believe it or not. With the black government, we're still having issues of police brutality and people dying unnecessarily and mindlessly at the hands of police. It brought that to the fore. It brought the food instability to the fore, how people have literally at times just been starving. The government chipped in and put together programs to try and relieve the dire straits that people were experiencing, and people were banding together. So it's been a very tough time, but also a time, I believe, of just great growth.
Wow, that's incredible. And we covered one of the stories of a police abuse with young Nathaniel, like 14 or 15 years old, shot to death out there in El Dorado Park, I believe it was. We had some activists there on. Wow, thank you very much, Thami. Mutter Evans.
And on that note, Greg, I mean, last time we spoke, we were speaking about Nathaniel Julies. Well, just yesterday, a man who was outside Wits University, Thokozisi Ntumba, he was shot. He was coming out of a clinic. There was a protest taking place outside, students demanding free education, wanting to be given access to universities, with the National Financial Aid Scheme not coming to the party right now. A lot of students being left out of registration. So they were protesting outside Wits University, for the opportunity to register, to go to classes, even though they're online classes, but really fighting for their right. And this young man coming out of the clinic was really a passerby, was unfortunately shot by police, and he passed away. And so, yes, we're talking about Nathaniel Julies then, but now we're talking about Thokozisi Ntumba there. And so it's really a dire situation.
I think it's interesting, Thami, in South Africa, how when we talk about police abuse, we know that South Africa is, a little more than 25 years removed from the apartheid system. So now we're assuming over here in the States that the police are African Americans. But my friends over in South Africa tell me that the Black folks might have control, but the police environment, the police customs and traditions are still in place. Is that true? Is that what you find to be true?
I think it's important, Greg, that when we talk about control, we need to carefully define what control really is. We may be in the majority, you certainly have the numbers, but we don't have economic control. We don't have the economic power. And in as much as, yes, it is a Black government, we do have Black police officers, but you will remember Marikana, which was basically a massacre of mine workers who were striking for living wages. And post Marikana, there was a commission that was put together called the Farnham Commission, which was mandated to see and discern how in the future we don't find ourselves in a position such as this, where protests end up being fatal and lethal. And there were some recommendations that were put in place as to how to efficiently police in times of unrest. And so we would have hoped that we would have learned from that, but we certainly need a whole lot more training. We need a whole lot more sensitivity. We need commitment that is visible and not just verbal, from leadership, to say that this is who we are as a people, and we need to treat all people with respect, irrespective whether you are Black or you are white. And there are also some quarters, and we've experienced this, where white protesters seem to be treated, or actually are treated, very differently from Black protesters. And so there's a long way to go. There really is a long way to go. It has to be a transformation of the mind, how we see ourselves, how we value ourselves, and a true sense of ownership of our space and our land and our currency, and being able to be a people that is self-determined. I'm reminded of Steve Biko when he said that being Black is not a matter of pigmentation. Being Black really is a state of mind. And that's where I think the true liberation needs to take place, and true affirmation needs to take place in the consciousness of our people.
All right, let me bring in Mutter Evans. Here we go. Look, we see social justice all over the world, and the voice of radio broadcasters, talking about this and inspiring us, informing us. In your history, you are the second African-American woman to own a radio station. Is that correct?
Dorothy Brunson and I both were approved in October of 1979.
Wow.
So I think she was a few days before me, but we share that honor, and I was privileged to meet Dorothy before we owned a station. And as a matter of fact, we first met when President Carter did a minority council at the White House there. And that's when I first met Dorothy. So yes, the history is long, and we've maintained a friendship throughout her life.
All right, so when you hear all of the women on our panel here, they've talked about, the struggles and the challenges, but yet, we still rise, even over in Africa, we still rise and we still remain the voice of the community. How important is it that Black radio is the voice of our community?
Greg, it can never be overstated. The broadcast industry has changed so much in recent decades with the ownership, and so I applaud Karen. Music, yes, but information is so important, and so to do talk radio, people need to be able to hear and to express those opinions, and that's one of the things that AAA did long before anyone else was doing that. I have been accused of having my own radio station via social media because though I've retired from that a number of years ago, but still very, very active in the community with different organizations. But you've got to keep the word out. You've got to keep people engaged. We locally here in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, are privileged to have some Black elected officials. We don't have Maxine, but we do have local elected persons on the city council, on our county commissioners. We've even have elected for the first time in the last election 4 years ago, Sheriff Kimbrough for the county. We've got a Black chief of police, female. So in this community, people are involved, and the leadership is broad-based. Unfortunately, we lost this past year a number of leaders of the decades, and it's hard to replace people who have been in the fight for decades at a time. But there are young people who are coming along with them and are stepping up. Everybody knows in terms of George Floyd and thinks about in terms of where he was. He has family right here in Eastern North Carolina. And so though he was several states away, that also, his death struck home. So here, we had the protests and the marches, but we did not have any loss of life. And I would attribute that to the leadership. And those persons who I just talked about, they were out there walking with them and listening to that. And you cannot overstate the need, not just to talk to, but to listen, and to give people an opportunity to express their views. And of course, with this pandemic, be it radio or not, everybody's learned how to do things a different way. I think for folks who are busy, there's more calls for Zoom meetings than for anything. So everybody has learned how to do things differently. People who did not have a voice are now organizing and coming up with ideas and are saying, let me pull together other people. And so that's the thing that I've observed about this year. It's been sad that with the loss of life, both through COVID and through normal causes, that you can't support family, you can't go out and comfort people. But in its absence, people have learned how to accept that and to be supportive anyway. And I think, that's where we are. People talk about normal. We won't go back to being normal. And so where we are is accepting this reality and how we make the best of it.
Well, let me just ask all of you now, you've heard everybody's story. And I want to start off with you, Wendy, and then everybody just kind of jump in. Now we have this rich legacy, right, of community service, of supporting the community, of informing our community. Wendy, you're on a academic setting there, or Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia. Tell me, how are you raising up the next generation of broadcasters? Does the next generation of broadcasters have the sensitivity of the community, or do they care? Or do they see the power of radio? What are you seeing with the young folk?
Well, that's a great question, Greg. And I will say, I'll answer that in two parts. One, we have been sadly absent of our students for about a year. And it pains us greatly, because now would be a time that students would be so involved. And during this Black Lives Matter movement, we weren't able to gather together. But students have been very much involved in advocacy through the campus, Clark Atlanta University, and also through the radio station. But I will say this, a great example of how students come into the station and they immerse themselves and they learn was the NBA All-Star Weekend that just left Atlanta. One of our students, Ashton Edmonds, started as a freshman here at WCLK, and he was one of the commentators who got to interview Chris Paul during the NBA weekend. And we take so much pride and we own that, because that's where the level that we want to get our students. And we're glad that we're here on a college campus, because we immerse them, whether it's fall, spring, summer semester. We get students involved, and year after year, I've been here 27 years, I have seen the cream of the crop rise. I have seen the cream rise, and students who have come in and they show determination, they end up being employed by us. So we have a great track record with our students with advocacy. I am pleased to say that students just came back this semester. They started back in February. Only the freshmen and seniors are back, but we can't wait till we can actually have students, intermixed with all of the activities of the station. That is our support. We have professional staff, certainly, but students can come in here and they can learn the craft, and they, work with us alongside us, and we end up depending on them. So we're training them to take over, and if not take over here, to go out into the world and be ready to hit the ground running with jobs.
All right, Kara Slade, young people paying attention?
Well, it's a little more difficult for us. We're a commercial station, and we are so separate from the universities. We used to have, which Greg, we used to have a very strong internship program. And that has slowly subsided. And in the last year, it's just almost been dead in the water. We work with Cal State Northridge, and they have still helped us, but we haven't had any students in the station, of course, because we're closed down. And it's a challenge to get them interested. When I go out and talk to them, their primary interest seems to be the new media, Google, Twitter, the social media, as well as the other platforms. So, which kind of makes you have to pivot. So, as a standalone, independent, African-American owned and operated station, trying to reach out to a younger demographic of African-Americans, Hispanics, what have you, their interest is not here. So when we do have, we're on to smart speakers, we have the app, we try to incorporate our use of our new media on our current platform as well as the new platforms and bring them in that way. We have not been as successful as we like. Most recently, we're working with LA County. They have a paid internship program. So we're working with them to bring them in, not in the facility, but into the operation, so that they get to understand, even though radio is a mature medium, it's not obsolete. Podcast and audio is very relevant today, as it always has been. So we just have to get them to focus on the content being provided by the platform across platforms, if that makes sense.
Makes all the sense of the world. Yeah. I mean, over here, as we, craft new paradigms in broadcasting over here at the Dream Creator Studios, same, we found that, we need to make it audio, and it's also on demand. You might have, we're doing this live right now, but by dinner time, we'll have, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people have, come on. It's in the on demand when you experience the new platforms. And I think it's wide ranging is what I found too with the age group. I know the young people, they want to hear more. They want to hear me cussing on here, but but you know, the whole thing is the consciousness, right, and the breadth of the Black experience that we present here is what keeps the younger end of our demos, you know, all together. Then we have a pretty strong, I won't even call it an intern program, but we do have young people come through here that are paid by the local employment agency, and they come in, they do 100 hours, and that's how we're able to, you know, get them in there. And they give us lots of ideas, run on social media sometimes and everything. You know, got to keep the babies involved there, and also teach them the legacy, you know, of our culture. And you know, over there in South Africa, Thami, what do you think? The young people listening?
Well, definitely. One thing about radio, I love what you said, Karen. Because basically you coined it and said content is king in not so many words. And ultimately, platforms will always continue to evolve as we are seeing and will continue to see, whether we're looking at the television viewing has now gone, you know, into streaming. We're seeing the Netflixes, etc. And so people's consumption habits have really changed, but the content they love probably hasn't changed. And I think what radio really gives are those foundations, the foundations of radio. So there's always great value in being able to start in radio, even though you may not end in radio. And radio may just be part of your platform mix, you know, the way they have a communication mix. There's also a platform mix, like you're doing, Greg. You've got podcasts, etc. But I must say, I think in South Africa, radio is still very, very sexy for the young ones. I think the young generation that's coming in, everybody wants to be, well, anybody who's interested in entertainment and media and who has that love for broadcasting, you want to be part of the legacy. You want to work where the greats have worked. You want to be with iconic radio stations. You want to have gone through there. And so I think for us, it's slightly different.
You know, it's interesting that I noticed in South Africa. So your jocks, your air personalities, they'll be so popular in the country. They'll be on the magazine covers, you know, in the grocery store. It's like, you know, it's really amazing how their talent quotient is through the roof, just as big as a movie star or a television star. A radio presenter is huge in South Africa. I know Thami is, you guys don't know, she is ginormous out there. I'll tell you all the stories. So I was on one of my trips in South Africa and called my friend Thami. Hey, I'm here, you know, and she drove out to Soweto to meet with me. And I'm gonna tell you, the people, when she came into the restaurant where we were, the people were coming, oh my God, oh, Thami, you know, she's signing autographs, she's shaking hands. I'm like, my goodness, superstar. Yes.
Well, I think, Greg, it just goes to show the power of radio. You know, on radio, you get to form relationships. You get to really bond with the hosts and the content. And so there's an opportunity for affinity, which many other mediums don't give you. Even television doesn't quite give you that, even as a television host. I know one of the key factors that really make our show work is the fact that we've got such amazing listener engagement and interaction. They can call in and we just talk, and we laugh and we share and we cry. And so there are opportunities for just really real human moments. And radio is a platform that can give you that.
All right.
It's that intimacy. The intimacy of radio. It's like a one-on-one relationship. Even though you're broadcasting, it's almost like a conversation. And one thing the new mediums allow you to do is get that two-way conversation. So you're not just broadcasting, you're having a dialogue, and then you can be more responsive using your social media platforms. That intimacy goes a long way with credibility, establishing credibility, maintaining that credibility and the relationship. So they'll be loyal to the brand and to the individual.
And also interaction of various platforms is also so important, as you mentioned, Karen. While you're on air, you're still engaging with your Twitter feed, and you're still engaging with the Instagram, and you're still engaging with all the other social media platforms. So there's still great opportunities to integrate new platforms into
exactly
the mother house, so to speak.
Exactly.
There is no substitute for good personality. So, though we've advanced in so many ways, if you've got strong personalities, people will listen. They will tell their family and their friends. And they too will tune in. So it's a combination still of personality and a message in the music and the beat. If you've got those three things, you've got a winning combination, no matter whether you're talking now or in the past or futuristically. And despite the other platforms, people reach back and they copy the best of what was. And they're just being more innovative with that. And as ownership has changed, and I share that with Karen, there's a difference in being with the Black owned media and even with CLK. Years ago, Wendy, I was early in my broadcast career, I was recognized by WCLK. So I've been there at Clark and on your campus. And there's a difference when your focus is more singular there. And with so many of our other, in modern radio, it's spread out. The control, you've got the stations, but somebody else, too many stations sound alike. So you no longer have the you.
Right.
As a friend of mine
That's
used
right.
to say, as being a muter, I could get in my car and leave Florida, and without knowing who was on where I was, I could tell where I was in the community all the way up the East Coast because of the sound of the station. And that was the power of personalities. So everybody knew about Frankie Crocker, but Frankie was in New York. But you also had your legends, throughout Florida. So I think young people, as they're recognizing that, they too are learning how to create their own brand, and that will also bring more of them back to it, because they're going to realize that winning combination, that they can intersperse their personalities into it and still create something new from what was legendary.
Absolutely. One of the things that you just mentioned, Mutter, is true, because we've been able to keep our jazz identity. And as you know, jazz formatted stations are very few and far between, but that is a heritage that we own, the African American sound that we have brought to this country. And that's something that we didn't have to give up, because we are owned and licensed by Clark Atlanta University. What we had to do is we had to get away for how the masses of those public radio, not public radio, but commercial operators wanted to homogenize jazz. And that's what led to the death of jazz. But because we were able to be innovative and create a sound that we knew resonated with our community, with our audience, and then we blend that with public affairs programming and community targeted messaging. That's how we've been a staple here so long, because as you know, jazz stations, they have gone by the wayside. But I'm thankful that we've been able to hone and craft our sound that has kept us here. We'll be celebrating 47 years this April. So I'm proud that we are one of the few, thank you all, jazz station that has risen above and have kept true to who we are. We are definitely programming for the community and the audience, and whatever it takes, we try everything we can to stay relevant within that, but we haven't had to really give up who we are just to please the masses or the commercial operators and owners of stations.
I think Wendy and Mutter hit it right on the point. It's the personality. And even though at one point in time they tried to basically kill personality radio, they wanted to homogenize it. They wanted to, play the best of urban music, but don't talk, shut up and play the music. Well, that's not who we are. We are expressive people. So those personalities will always shine through. You can't keep them down. And as we elevate our personalities, build our personalities, and equip them with resources and information, they will excel, and so will the brand. Go ahead.
No, certainly, Karen. If you look at what's happening in South Africa, it's almost the other way around, because personalities are still very big here, a personality-driven radio. But the challenge that we're finding now is the challenge of marrying what you're talking about, Karen, personality radio, and what you, Mutter, mentioned there, the absolute necessity of solid content. So what you're finding now is because there's so many Instagram personalities and social media personalities who have humongous followings, you'll find some of the radio executives and radio stations taking and drawing from that pool of Instagram personalities and social media personalities and trying to put them onto the radio. Now, that doesn't always translate to good radio. The personality may be there, but there's also a level of skill and efficiency that you need on that particular medium. So there needs to be, I think, a very delicate balance of how you maintain the very strong personalities, but personalities with the requisite skills and the content to still be able to deliver worthwhile listener experiences and content.
That's really interesting. Kind of same thing that's happening in our industry here is like you have non-radio folks sitting in seats, and you have a whole generation of broadcasters who found themselves out of work because they put the influencers in the seat. And I think it works sometimes, but other times, you have to have the requisite skills for sure to be on the radio. Interesting.
Well, you still have the obligation to make sure that you keep your license and protect your license. So there's some fundamental things from a business side that you have to do. You have to be in compliance always, at least commercial, NPR, public radio, and then you have to be in the black. You have to be profitable, right? And you have to remain relevant and current and in motion. So, there's a lot of things that you juggle in our various seats, but the bottom line is, I don't think we'll ever go away. We just have to maintain our relevancy. Don't be afraid of change and new experiences. Embrace it and find a way to work it into what you do best, which is give Black folks what they want. Good music for KJLH, accurate information, and access.
Now you guys have, I'm counting up our years here. We got a whole.
Watch out!
Hey, I'm in there too, but we got centuries in here.
Watch out!
Greg, that just means that we were not one-hit wonders, okay?
That's right.
Thank you, Mutter.
Okay, so everybody, let's see. Okay, I know I got stories, man. Boy, and I look back on things and sometimes you go, wow, there's been events and situations, especially at KJLH, where I can look back and say, wow, we did that, man. It was like really, really incredible. Share with the people, start with you, Karen. What's your fondest memory? Give us that championship moment.
Boy.
There's a lot.
I'll go back to the civil unrest of '92. Okay. That wasn't really a championship moment. It was chaos and all hell had broken out. But we were trying to do the right thing. At that time, I had a news department. So I had two news people. One was in the courthouse for the trial, and one was getting actualities from the streets. And the riots erupted. And I was pretty new to the industry at that time, but thankfully I had a strong news team. Those two folks, we stopped the music, we went all talk, and over the next 3.5 days, we really went at it. We had officers came in, we had Rodney King come in, we had Johnny Cochran come in, we had everyone came. It was like Denzel came in. They all came into the station wanting to be a part of it. It was live and local, but it was also so relevant and so timely. And it wasn't until, I guess, a year after that, when we were putting pieces together, we collected money. We weren't even trying to collect money. People were just writing checks and sending us money. Churches were making collections and sending them to KJLH. And so we did microloans back to small businesses in the community that were burned out. All of this was happening. We were just in motion trying to do the right thing. And then a year later, one of AT&T rep was in LA at that time and submitted KJLH for a Peabody. We didn't submit ourselves. We didn't know. So in hindsight, that was a high point, but it was so stressful. It was so crazy. It was unpredictable. I wasn't prepared for it. But when you do good radio and you try to remain relevant and be true, it's like good things will happen. Not that that incident was a good thing. It was a horrible thing. But we were in tune. I remember someone calling the station, a senior citizens home. There was a fire next door and the people couldn't get out of the building. So they called KJLH. I'm like, we're a radio station. You should call the police, the fire department. Why? So, of course, we went on air and said, look, these people need help. There's a fire at such and such. And, we called the fire department. Neighbors came out and they got the people that could not move out of the facility. So I guess remaining relevant, not just in word, but in deed. So when they say KJLH is going to do something, they know we're going to do it and we're going to bust our butts to do it and do it to the best of our ability. We have a saying, we are you. And that's true. We are the community we serve. Did that kind of answer?
Sure did. Yes. Wendy, what about you? Championship moment.
Oh gosh, I would say when we were shifting our station, this is after the proliferation of all the media streams and satellite radio, our station was plummeting. We were losing, and then there was a resurgence of stations into this market that were chipping away at every format that we had on our station. We had gospel, we had jazz, we had blues. So stations were coming into the market, siphoning off full-blown stations that would do gospel and that would do contemporary jazz. And we were still mainstream. And our announcers were picking and choosing their music. So there was no rhyme or reason. And we couldn't afford to get research, but through several bartering and moves with some other radio companies, we had some translators and we leveraged those translators to get the music study, the market test that we needed. We went from announcers selecting the music and seeing our listenership down to that 70,000 listeners, weekly queue of listeners. And this was for a period of years. I was pulling my hair out. I'm like, what should we do? And then we did the music study, the market test, as one of the things that we were able to do in 2012. And we shifted our music and we came up with the music format that is more of a contemporary as well as a contemporary, and we call it classic, contemporary, cool jazz format. And now we have seen our audience almost triple in size from that moment. And it was just pivotal moment for the station because as a member supported station, we were losing money as well. So 2012 will always be the year that I have to say, God saved the station. He saved me, he saved the station. And we've been climbing to heights ever since. It's been phenomenal. Our fundraising support is through the roof. And even with that, we've been able to bring in, high profile jazz artists. We've had here George Duke, George Benson. We've had Gerald Albright. We've had Brian Culberson. And we sell out these shows. And now we do, prior to COVID, we do about 3 shows a year where we are selling out auditoriums and people want to hear not only what we play on the air, but they want to see the artists that we play. So 2012 was really a pivotal year for this station and for me.
Karen Slade, we know what it's like to fight against that evil empire, don't we?
When I first started, maybe a year after I started, the big boys came in. I won't say who they are. They took my morning man, my program director, and my afternoon drive guy. Now, I had been there about a year, and they just wiped me out. I had no contracts with my talent. And so now I'm struggling, like, what? But it's what's interesting, I'll say for Black women, when I used to say, this is not a nice saying, when you get kicked in the ass, you find out what you're made out of. So it's the beauty of all of our collective experiences is we've been through the fire, we're still standing, and we're moving forward. And all those lessons we've learned by being kicked by the big boys, go, okay, I can do that. And I'll say this, they've all come in and tried to take us out because we're one station, we're Class A. We don't even cover the entire market. Guess what? 55 years and going strong. I won't tell you how many of those 55 years I've been here. But as many times as they focused at us to just take us out of the market because of our credibility with our consumer group, our listeners, all the things that we do, from our women's health outreach to our men's empowerment outreach. Everything we've done over the years, they can't get rid of us so easy because we remain relevant. So I think we as women, we can take a hit, but we don't stop. We don't fall over and keel over. We just get a little tougher, stand a little taller, and keep moving forward.
When you hear these stories, what do you say? What's your feeling?
Great stories. I'm going to share briefly two. There was a young man here in the early 80s. His name was Darrell Hunt. Some of you may have seen his documentary. He's a young man, a writer for the Twin City Journal, was killed. He was accused of it. There was no DNA that put him with the crime. He was tried, but he was just an average person on the street, and they needed someone. It was a white woman, a black man, so he was arrested. His first trial, a young gentleman, not so young, they're again with the age now, Larry Lip, who had actually played ball with him, met him at the YMCA. And he heard about the case, he just went, "There's no way. That's not the character of that young man." And so he took up the banner of fighting for him before he became an attorney. He walked around, he shared information, he came to me. We had a talk show on it. He came in, he talked to us about it. And when the first verdict came out, people knew that he should not have been found guilty. And we took off music, and we did like 5 hours talk radio so that people could express what they were feeling, and that they did not take to the street, that they didn't burn things down. Well, second trial and the third trial. Fast forward, finally, when you could go back and pull out the DNA, because it's all now kind of centralized. The person who killed him, there was a match. So after almost 20-some years, he was free. And from that also became the eugenics prop down in North Carolina State with the state government. So they made some changes in the way in which they went about doing things. So it's things like that. Joanne Little, you may have heard of her, Eastern North Carolina. She was found guilty with self-defense. The officer where she was had a pick to her and made her actually perform oral sex on him. And when he went to release force, she grabbed it and she killed him. It was in self-defense, but she had to end up being there. And that's one of those cases that you hear of, and the name just left me, that people have been involved with it. So we're an AM station, but we have to share that information because that's important. That you just don't believe the headlines, that you get to the bottom and the root of it. And the last thing I would say, when I took over the station in 1979, Dr. King had been deceased, and right after he died, the effort from Congressman out of Michigan and Mrs. King began the fight then to have his birthday made a holiday. I was new. I was in the town, though I went to school here. I asked in 1980 was the station's 30th anniversary. It was my first as an owner. And I asked, what is Winston-Salem doing to recognize Dr. King's birthday? And the answer was nothing. We haven't done anything. And I'm going, there are too many Blacks here in this community for us not to pay tribute to him. We don't need to have the law. We keep fighting for that, but we don't need to wait until that's done. So the first noon hour commemoration, which I spearheaded with the support of my staff always. We did it in 2 days. We could do that because of the power of radio. So for the very first one, in 2 days, there were over 100 people who were standing outside. This past January, virtually, um, we did the 41st program, 5 days before the national holiday. So, and from that, and the oldest unconsistent program going on in the state. But when you do things for the right reason, other people come in, and that becomes a challenge. Not only were we doing things on radio, we were airing Dr. Martin Luther King Speaks before that happened, so people knew the relevancy. But it was also important that you didn't just get hung up on, I have a dream. As important as that is, the man was far deeper than that. That you needed to read and understand what he was saying in his letter from Birmingham when he was in jail. When I think about things now, one of his quotes is, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter." That's as relevant today as it was when he made those statements in the early 60s. And pulling that together and not to knock what other people do, but we always made that a relevant program. We paid tribute to him, but we made it relevant on what's going on in the community, what's happened the past year, what's the projections for the next year. So that also became the battling cry at the beginning of each year in terms of voter registration. What happened in Georgia was wonderful. But even before then, we were pushing and making sure that people say, get out. You got to vote. You got to register people. They've got to understand who's on the ballot and not just at the top. There's still things that we have to do there. But all of that was also against the backdrop of what he did, what he fought for, and understanding, and not, years ago I had the chance to meet Yolanda and Mrs. King as well. So understanding their personal relationship and their loss, we can't just sweep over things. And I'm happy to say that AAA Radio was in the forefront of that. And as a result of things that we did, everybody's doing something now. But the pride is that despite there are lots of things, we're still growing hundreds of people year after year. And that becomes a teaching example. And so the new thing about young folks is they hear things in bite size. We've got to make them and encourage them to dig deeper, not just what's on the top. They've got to read. You pick up your phone, you see just a little bit, but you gotta click on and read that whole story, and that's what I see is so much important. And we were an AM station, so as Karen talked about being, they're coming after you. They came after me too. It was the FM that came after me to get the people from me. They got the lion's share of the money, the ratings, which was based on that. But when you're doing the right thing, people embrace that, and I am pleased. It makes me smile that as I go out and I'm involved in, be it Kwanzaa, Juneteenth, Black History Month, other things that I may be called upon to do. It's also young people who heard about that, and in their own way, they're making their mark, and that's what. Stevie Station and under your leadership, Karen, that you've also continued to do on the West Coast. And when the game changes, when we get too strong, then we eliminate people. The question sometimes, and I think about it, and I don't know. And you all know him, Tom Joyner had a reputation. Tom wasn't the best jock in the world, but he was effective. When he left one market and then became the fly jock, and then with the syndicated programming. But I think about his message out there, stations like yours and personalities like his and others, without them, on top of the creative way in which Barack Obama ran his campaign, without that, we would not have had a Black president elected in 2008. So now, what do? You start to shutting down those things. You eliminate those voices to the extent so that you don't have that duplication again. You know, you gotta dig deeper. It's so much more than what appears to be on the surface to be involved. And so we don't want Aunt Maxine to go away. We want people like her. We need those voices. We need Jim Clyburn in South Carolina. You know, the politicians, but not everybody, you know. Vernon Jordan, bless his heart, he lost so many great people this past year that radio provided a forum for them when TV didn't have them on as guests.
That's true.
When they were not on the front page of a newspaper. So no matter what you do and with the format, the jazz there is great because you tell all those stories. You pull it all back together. You know, AAA radio, I will say this about it. It was, though I acquired it from a white owner, it had always been Black programs. Okay. So when people think about that, so we had the R&B, we did the gospel, we did the jazz, we did the news, we did NBN, National Black Radio Network News, with local news, okay? And so the more things change, the more they remain the same. You come full circle. And the things that you thought that you didn't necessarily need anymore, you find out that something is missing. You go back and you need to look and say, okay, what made that work then? And how do we polish it? How do we make it relevant, more relevant, so that those young minds who we need, because they're not the leaders of the future, they're our leaders now. And we don't need to lose more people. Black Lives Matter, of course, is important. But they matter, and we can't have the blood being shed, because it's between that and being in prison, we're losing too many of our folks. And they're not just the boys, it's the young women as well. So all of that, it's just kind of hard to pick out just one story, Greg, when you are involved in the fabric of your community. And that's what it is. It's not just about having the license to operate. You know, you're supposed to serve your community, and you can give lip service to that, or you can dig deeper and find out what the needs are and really serve the community. And when you do that, you'll find that they will not abandon you. You may not get the lion's share of the budget, Karen.
I know.
I didn't, which is a problem for me in terms of small radio. You know, public radio, you can take contributions, and that's a good thing, you know, Wendy. And with sponsor support, it's a little bit different when you're unique there. So you keep on fighting, and that would be my encouragement to those of you who are still very much in the fight. I'm in it, just in a different way.
All right, that's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I want to say this. We're running out of time here, but I want to just have each of you give a parting shot, and I'm coming back to you, Thami, because as you give your parting shot, I do want you to share just a short story about what your favorite, your favorite championship moment is in your career. But let me just kind of circle back to Wendy. You know, I'm very interested in the public media. I know you're the chairman of the African American Public Radio Consortium, and
Yes.
for me, now that after Karen Slade birthed me, I'm out here doing business now. I've worked alongside her a long thing. I'm kind of good at it. I got some lessons. So, but the platform, I'm really super interested in the public media platform, and that's how I actually discovered you. Long before I knew you were working with my good friend David Linton, I didn't even know. I just saw your name, And so, tell us real briefly what that is. And then just give us a parting shot. And I want to engage you even further on that whole thing, because I do believe the listener-supported, the public media space is a underserved, yet still strong segment, if that makes sense, for us as a people, as Black broadcasters. Go.
Absolutely. And just to that point, many of us on that public sector, we are licensed by HBCUs. So that's what makes us unique also. That, that gives us the unique richness of the African American audience right there, and the young people and the students that are coming up. So, and they're all over. There's probably a good 50 HBCU stations. Some of them are getting support through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and some of them are just student run. But there are some that are professional, and that's about 30 who are professionally run, like CLK is. The African American Public Radio Consortium is about 10 years old, and it comes from a need within these public radio stations that are HBCUs that we weren't getting information or programming that really served us. Many of us subscribe to National Public Radio, but we didn't feel that National Public Radio, NPR, went deep enough in serving the needs of our community. And so what we were able to do is, when we established AAPRC, was allow whatever stories you're working on, whatever content you have out of your station, any station, you could pull that content, and we would harness it and make it available to anybody who wanted. Whether it was music programming, whether it's talk programming, and it's all subject matter from health information to blues, jazz. We take this content that all these stations are producing, and even some content creators are brand new, and we have jazz music hosts, and all this music is put on this content depot. This music and talk programming and all content, as I said, is put on the content depot, which is ran by the AAPRC. We make it available to people, and stations can take content. I take content from stations like in Alabama. I take content, and then we also give content. So it's a sharing. It's like a depot, if you will, of content that all of the stations have created at their respective stations, and that they upload it to this content depot for everyone to share. And anyone can become a member of the AAPRC. You don't even have to be an HBCU station or a public radio station to become a member of the AAPRC. And when you do become a member, that programming is available to you, as well as you can upload programming to it.
Sign me up.
And by the way, that is ran by my colleague, who, one of your questions was who is one of your role models, and Loretta Rucker, who runs that, she's the president, and she invited me on as the chairman, and we've been with this thing for 10 years when we were on a shoestring budget, and we have grown it from literally about 2 or 3 stations to over 115 stations that are now part of the AAPRC. So she would get my nod as my hero. She-Ro.
That's right. That's right. Parting shots to the people. Are you at the station?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Wendy,
Well, I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. I've enjoyed meeting each one of you ladies and hearing your stories and hearing what you're doing in your communities. I'm just so proud that this is a community of us like this. We don't get to see each other often. Sometimes, I mean, we're on different coasts and different places, but it's certainly a pleasure to have met y'all, to hear your stories, and I hope that we can do it again as well. Greg, it's been great meeting you.
Great meeting you too. Look at that. We got the West
That was
Coast.
a perfect roundup. Okay.
I think we have a women in media conference.
Yes. All right, here's Slade, parting shots.
Oh, well, let me just say, we have a public radio station here in LA, which I shouldn't admit to, but it's KPCC.
Yes.
Pasadena. Fantastic programming. Fantastic.
I was a student broadcaster on that station, 89.
They're phenomenal. They do good work. They do very good work. I'm so excited to hear all the stories and the little fellowship. It gives me such a good feeling, because often you're so busy with your head down trying to meet payroll, pay your music licensing, doing all the things you have to do to keep it going. It's very seldom that you get to really celebrate your achievements and recognize your sisters and brothers in broadcasting. I think that's why, if I was going to give a nod, it would be to NABOB. Of course, Stevie hired me, so he gets the first nod. But the second nod would be NABOB, National Association of Black-Owned Broadcasters. And I say that because I came in from Xerox Corporation. I was very corporate when I started. and I didn't really understand. You know, I came in from a manufacturing business and I thought, okay, what's my product? What's my consumer? I mean, it's very unrealistic when you go into broadcasting. It was a different mindset, a different business. And NABOB helped me to understand my business, how to be better at performing my task. And through the years, each year with each conference, I've learned a little more, taking something away, immediately applied it, and made a host of friends that have helped me brainstorm, problem solve, and network over the years. And if I give one person a tribute besides NABOB, it would be Willie Davis. Mm-hmm. Willie Davis was a local owner here in Los Angeles. He was an NFL great, Vince Lombardi guy. And he really was so knowledgeable. He owned, I think, about 5 radio stations and a television station at one point. He would just listen to me talk and rant and rave. And he would give me just the simplest guidance, words of wisdom. And God bless him, he passed last year, but he was a wealth of knowledge, a true resource. So when we find someone that can help us, we should tap into that. And now in our position, we must be that person that we look up to. Now we must pay it forward, have a right of succession, and bring in people so that we say, well, I haven't found anyone that really understands what it's all about. Well, then it's up to you to help them to understand. So if your legacy is anything, it's broadcasting with a credible integrity, commitment to the community, all those things you value. Let's make sure the next generation has that. So I would challenge each of us to make sure that we bring the next generation up with us.
Hey, Thami, how about you? What's your parting shot? And but give us a short story on one of your greatest moments in broadcast history.
Well, first, I have to really echo what your sentiments, Wendy, and Karen. What a fabulous platform, and what a privilege to be with women such as yourself and you, Greg. And just the level of conversation and the content has really been just so inspiring and invigorating. So thank you all so much just for the privilege of being able to share this platform with you. And much agreed, Karen. We certainly need to make this something that continues, especially across the oceans. And as women continue to share their experiences in business and navigating the world and issues of social justice. And, may this just be the first of many, Greg. So thank you very much for the platform. And I really have just gained so much from all the ladies on the platform. So thank you for that. When I've got to choose championship moments, I really cannot, because I think my career as a broadcaster is in itself a championship moment, because I so value the interaction that I have every single time I'm on air with the listeners. Because it's an opportunity to share. My show is a gospel show. So I do gospel, the sacred space. And then I also do news on television as a news anchor. So that's a very interesting combination because we do hardcore news, we're covering protests, we're covering politics, we cover elections, we cover issues of social justice on the television network as an anchor. And then I do the gospel side of it, which is really the nurturing from the inside out, and just trying to make sense of the world and trying to gain your own inner peace and your peace with God, and so that for me is just such a privilege to be able to occupy those spaces, and to be able to navigate along with our viewers and our listeners, through this life, and through being a catalyst for change in our communities and living with consciousness, because I think so often, especially now, because everything is moving so quickly, especially in the news cycle, everything changes, and we constantly then forget to touch base and to reel ourselves in. And back to what you were talking about, Mutter, about the power and the essence of intention. Why do we do what we do? And that requires us to live from the inside out. And so for me, I'd say, Greg, my entire career really is a championship moment, because it's just something that I so greatly appreciate, to have the opportunity to introspect and reflect and watch, and what does all of this mean, and how does it all come together, and how do we change the world? How do we change our own situations? How do we empower ourselves, and how do we empower each other? How do we fight for those who don't have a voice, and try to lift up the consciousness of our people and our nations? So that it summarizes, I guess, how I would coin it.
All right. Well, that I love it. Hey, look, you guys, I forgot to tell you, she's a preacher now. That's my friend.
Well, I do minister, yeah. That too.
Yes.
And it's needed. Thank you.
That too.
Yes, good stuff. You know, you guys, it has been such an honor to have you on here, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. Thank you for every moment that our lives have intersected. You know, Mutter, I was working at Lee Bailey when I met you by telephone when we had Radioscope back in the days, boy. I was fresh out of the Marine Corps there, and Thami Ngubeni, you know, that's always one of my closest people. I mean, I just love her so much. And we actually met here in the United States. She came to go to UCLA, and a friend of mine called and said, "Hey, this lady's coming from South Africa. You know, can you watch out for her?" We went out and met her at the airport. And Karen, I don't know if you remember, I brought her to the radio station.
I think so.
Yes.
Yes. I was like, does she look familiar to me?
Yeah.
And you guys were perfect hosts, and you took such good care of me at KJLH.
So glad.
Yeah, you were awesome.
You were on our best behavior.
Glad to know it.
And it was also around the time of Martin Luther King celebration. So you had the huge truck going up and down the road, parading, and the whole festival, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming by. Come back again.
I will. I'll look you up.
And Wendy, you know, yes, let's stay close, and you know, thank you for everything that you have been doing to advance the culture through radio. It's important, it's essential, and we don't take it lightly. I mean, and then Karen Slade, you know how it is. I love Karen Slade. That's yes.
Thank you,
Seen a lot together. You know, these eyes have seen a lot, and it's just, you guys, all of you, kudos to what you have done. And Mutter, I want to just kind of close out with you. You know, give us one short, quick word of wisdom as we leave out.
Short and quick, huh, Greg?
Yeah.
I would say I've got to do several. First of all, the fact I was one of the first 2 Black women, but I was the youngest Black in America. I acquired the station at the age of 26. Opportunity presented itself. I didn't know my head from my tail. I started through news, Thami. That was my entree into the business. But what I did recognize was the importance of communication. And I wasn't afraid to fail. My parents were both teachers. So I knew that even in failing and in losing, there's an education. And I was young. I had nowhere to go but up, whether or not it worked with the station or not. I was not afraid to ask for what I want. So I negotiated. I had done some of that to make the deal that made more sense with the prior owner. So all of this in terms of wherever you are and what you're doing, age doesn't have to be your handicap. You're getting young while you can still learn, and you never stop learning. I'm still learning. Okay, I have to also. Karen made me think about in terms of Nabob, because that was my saving grace. When I got the station, I was there in the very beginning. I met Willie Davis. I'll never across the table from him, and they misspelled my name tag, and it said Mutter, and this massive man kept looking at me, and he went, "How do you say that?" And I was talking about the 2 dots, the umlaut over the U, and I said, And then when I looked down the name tag that I put on, hadn't paid any attention. We had the biggest laugh, and we, you know, and we became fast friends as a result of that. But one of his proteges that worked with him was Bill
Shear.
Cheryl.
Bill Shear.
His best friend. And so as he went up through the ranks and was working then for inner city broadcasting and then he worked for Willie and his background and then acquired his own station, Bill and I maintained friendships throughout his life. When he would be traveling back and forth to California, he got me notes. Hey, Mutter, we're doing this. I don't know if it would do you any good, but I just thought I would share. So my point is, you never know where your friends are going to come from. You learn from so many people. That word, Greg, is that we all have people that we look up to. For me, my first heroes were my parents, and always. Small town, rural North Carolina, but they believed in me and my brother and I and encouraged us. And they let us do what we wanted to support it, you know, because there again, people say failing isn't an option, but failing is not final. You fall down, you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and you keep on going. And our challenge as seniors is that we have a lot to share, but we also have to listen. You never know when you're being watched, and you have to pay attention to that. And somebody needs to ask a question, take the time to answer that question. It's not always about the amount of time that can be the seed of encouragement, that spark. You know, I'm amazed with some of the things that have gone on, even with the induction into the Radio Hall of Fame. Some of the comments that I've gotten to the people said, "You motivated me to do this, that, and the other." I don't even know who they are.
Right.
The same is true with all of you. When I came out to California in '93, Greg, you were very nice to me. You met me, came and picked me at the hotel, and showed me around some. So all of my relationships that are there, and with Karen, I remember with you. And I must say this: your last name is Slade. One of my best friends from childhood is your cousin. So the connection isn't just in the industry. Sheila Slade, who now lives in Durham, we go all the way back to first grade, and we're still in touch. So
my family's there. I've not been there, but my family, the Slades are my family.
And this pandemic messed up the family reunion. I know the was about to come. The point is that you may lose contact, but good seeds sown in good soil never stop growing. And you don't know where the wind may blow them and where it will take root and will grow. So that's to all of us. As long as you're still here, you've got something to give. To young folks who are listening, take the time to listen. Don't always be looking for the shortcut and the easy one. My last thing, and I'm stopping here, Greg, I've got to say this because my counterpart to not having the HBCU in Winston-Salem is Winston-Salem State University. For about 10 years, I was an adjunct instructor. But also with their radio station, we had an internship program. So I've actually had people who were interns who later came to work for me. But I'll never forget one young man who, one of the questions that I asked is, I said, your long-term plan, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And he looked at me, he said, I want your job. I plan to be sitting exactly where you are. And I smiled. I love his bravado, but I'm going, no, honey, you got before you can sit in this seat. But nonetheless, you know, you encourage all of that. You don't, that was my thought. I never told him that. I can't even remember what his name is, but I will never forget that he's on an interview, but he tells me, hey, I want your job. And that's what you got to do. You got to keep pushing. When one thing pushes you out, find another way in which you can use your talent to still make a difference with your family and smaller community. You don't know how that impacts. So do that with a kind word, with a smile. Those are the things that people never forget.
All right. Well, with that, we got to go. And I really appreciate you all. You guys listen to that. Phenomenal Black women in radio. How lucky am I? I just sit here with all of these queens of broadcasting. Man, this is really, really great. Made my day, is what we say.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
so much.
All right, everybody.
Nice to meet you.
You can
Wendy,
share it. Like
Thami,
it.
Mutter.
Yes, we will stay in
Get
touch.
Thank you so
on,
much.
Greg knows how to reach us all.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, yes.
outstanding.
Get us on social media. You'll see us Coffee Conversations with Greg J, beachcityradio.com. And in about an hour, you'll be able to hear this audio podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. Just download it right there. Coffee Conversations with Greg J. And always remember, y'all, love one another. Love one another. Love one another. Peace and blessings.